My world shattered when Sarah confessed her affair. I never saw it coming. We'd been married for 8 years, and to say I was blindsided would be an understatement. I remember the evening she dropped the bombshell. We were sitting in our living room, sipping on glasses of red wine. The TV was on, but I couldn't tell you what show was playing. The atmosphere was tense. I could feel it in the air. "Mark, we need to talk," Sarah said, her voice trembling. She put her wine glass down and took a deep breath. "What's wrong?" I asked, my heart racing. My mind raced through various scenarios, but infidelity wasn't one of them. "I've been seeing someone else," she admitted, tears welling up in her eyes. "And there's something else I need to tell you." My stomach churned as I tried to process her words. Seeing someone else? That alone was devastating. But what could be worse than that? She continued, "I've been thinking, Mark, about the idea of an open marriage. I want to explore my feelings for this other person." I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. An open marriage? It was as if she just handed me a grenade and expected me not to pull the pin. The very thought of it was absurd, and my first instinct was to refuse. But then something unexpected happened. Maybe it was the shock or the desperation to salvage our relationship. I hesitated for a moment, and then the words came out of my mouth. "I'll agree to an open marriage, Sarah, but on one condition." She looked at me, puzzled and cautious. "What condition?" "You have to let me have an affair too." Sarah's eyes widened in disbelief. She hadn't expected that response. I saw a mix of shock and confusion on her face. In that moment, it was as if we'd entered uncharted territory, and we were both unsure of the path ahead. After a tense silence, Sarah finally nodded reluctantly, thinking that I'd never go through with it. She assumed it was just a desperate attempt to hold on to her. Little did she know that I was dead serious. I had a plan, and it involved introducing her to someone who would turn her world upside down, just like she'd done to mine. I couldn't allow her to walk away unscathed after what she'd put me through. So, I decided to introduce Sarah to Emily, a woman I'd met through a friend. Emily was attractive, intelligent, and, most importantly, willing to play her part in my twisted game. As Sarah hesitantly embarked on her affair with a man she met online, named David, I watched from the shadows, plotting my revenge. I knew this was the beginning of a dangerous game, one that would test the limits of our marriage and the depths of our emotions. Little did Sarah know that her life was about to take a tumultuous turn, and she would soon experience the same pain and betrayal she'd inflicted upon me. As days turned into weeks, Sarah's affair with David deepened. It was like a dark cloud looming over our marriage, casting a shadow we couldn't escape. The lies and cover-ups became increasingly elaborate, and I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. Sarah would sneak around, texting David under the guise of work meetings or girls' nights out. Our once open and honest communication had turned into a web of deception. I felt like a detective, piecing together the fragments of her secret life. One evening, I overheard her whispering to David on the phone in the bedroom. She thought I was asleep, but every word cut deeper into my heart. I couldn't escape the reality that our marriage was unraveling before my eyes. As if the situation wasn't complicated enough, Emily entered the picture. She had initially agreed to be my affair partner, but her feelings for me were becoming more than just physical attraction. I could sense it in the way she looked at me, the way she touched my arm when we were together. It was a dangerous game, and I was starting to lose control. The tension and jealousy between the four of us were palpable. Sarah would shoot me icy glares when she saw Emily and me talking or laughing together. Emily, on the other hand, would become distant whenever she suspected Sarah and I were spending time alone. One evening, Sarah confronted me about Emily's growing presence in my life. Accusations flew, and we argued like we never had before. It was a toxic mix of anger, betrayal, and resentment. Our marriage was hanging by a thread, and we both knew it. Then came the bombshell: Sarah was pregnant. She hesitantly told me, her eyes filled with uncertainty. My heart sank as I grappled with the overwhelming question: was this child mine or David's? Suspicion gnawed at me like a relentless beast. The timing was too perfect, too suspicious. I couldn't ignore the possibility that this baby might not be mine. It was a painful realization that tore at the last remnants of trust in our marriage. Sarah's pregnancy intensified the strain between us. The questions, the doubts, and the betrayal had pushed us to the brink. Our relationship was hanging on by a thread, and we were both drowning in a sea of uncertainty. The future was uncertain, and the path ahead seemed darker than ever. David's relentless pressure on Sarah to leave me for him had become unbearable. He saw her vulnerability and exploited it, using the threat of revealing their affair as a weapon to manipulate her. I could see the toll it was taking on Sarah, and it fueled my determination to bring this twisted game to an end. One evening, after another heated argument with David, Sarah reached a breaking point. She couldn't bear the weight of his ultimatum any longer. Desperation painted her face as she finally decided to confide in someone, and that someone was her best friend, Lisa. Lisa was always there for Sarah, a pillar of strength in her life. She had a way of soothing Sarah's fears and providing a listening ear. So, when Sarah poured her heart out about the affair and the threats, she expected comfort and advice. But what Sarah didn't expect was the bombshell Lisa dropped next. In a hushed and uneasy tone, Lisa admitted, "Sarah, there's something I need to tell you. I've been seeing David for months." Sarah's world crumbled. The person she trusted the most, the one she confided in, had betrayed her in the worst possible way. It was as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet, leaving her in freefall. As the shock settled in, Sarah began to connect the dots. David and Lisa had been working together all along, using her as a pawn in their twisted game to gain control over my life and manipulate our marriage. It was a cruel and calculated plan that had pushed us all to the brink. With newfound clarity and a burning anger, Sarah decided to confront David and Lisa. She couldn't let them continue to hold her hostage with their threats and lies. The confrontation was inevitable, and the stakes were higher than ever. When the moment finally came, it was a whirlwind of emotions. Accusations flew, voices rose, and tempers flared. Sarah was no longer the vulnerable woman they thought they could control. She had found her strength, her voice, and she was determined to put an end to their treacherous scheme. In the heat of the argument, the threat of exposure hung in the air like a sword dangling by a thread. David and Lisa realized that their house of cards was teetering on the edge of collapse, and their desperate attempts to maintain control were slipping through their fingers. The confrontation marked a turning point in our tangled web of deceit and betrayal. The battle lines were drawn, and it was clear that no one would emerge from this unscathed. The coming days promised more twists, more turmoil, and a reckoning that none of us could have foreseen. The tension in our lives had reached a boiling point, and Sarah and I knew that it was time to take action. We had both been ensnared in David and Lisa's deceitful plan for far too long. It was time to turn the tables. With newfound determination, we decided to work together. Our common enemy was a formidable duo, but we were fueled by a burning desire for justice. We couldn't let David and Lisa continue to manipulate our lives and threaten our marriage. Our first step was to gather evidence against them. We started by documenting every interaction, every text message, and every piece of information that could expose their web of lies. It was a painstaking process, but we were meticulous in our efforts. As we dug deeper, we uncovered a tangled web of deception. David and Lisa had been orchestrating their plan for months, weaving an intricate tapestry of lies and betrayal. It was a chilling revelation that made us even more determined to expose them. Once we had gathered enough evidence, we knew it was time to confront David and Lisa. It was a nerve-wracking moment, but we couldn't let fear hold us back any longer. We demanded that they leave our lives forever, that their reign of manipulation and deceit come to an end. The confrontation was tense, to say the least. Accusations flew, tempers flared, and the air was thick with anger and resentment. David and Lisa, cornered and exposed, had no choice but to reluctantly agree to leave. But as they walked away, they vowed revenge with a chilling determination in their eyes. With their departure, there was a sense of relief, but the scars of their betrayal ran deep. Sarah and I were left to pick up the pieces of our shattered lives, and our marriage bore the brunt of the damage. Our relationship was strained, trust had been eroded, and the wounds were far from healed. But we were determined to rebuild. Slowly, we began the arduous process of rebuilding trust, of finding our way back to each other. It was a journey filled with ups and downs, moments of doubt and insecurity. But there was a newfound resilience in our bond, a shared experience of betrayal that had forged an unbreakable connection. As we navigated the turbulent waters of our marriage, we held on to the hope that, someday, we would emerge from this stronger than ever. The aftermath of the chaos brought by David and Lisa had left me emotionally battered. I felt like a ship adrift in a stormy sea, unable to find my way back to calmer waters. Desperation led me to seek help where I could find it, therapy. I started attending therapy sessions, trying to cope with the emotional trauma caused by the affair. My therapist, Dr. Foster, was a no-nonsense kind of guy. He cut straight to the heart of the matter, forcing me to confront my pain head-on. Therapy wasn't easy. It was like ripping open old wounds, but I knew it was necessary. Dr. Foster helped me dissect the emotions I'd been suppressing for far too long: the anger, the betrayal, the insecurity. It was a slow and painful process, but it was a step towards healing. During this tumultuous time, Sarah had an unexpected surprise for us. She gave birth to our child, a tiny bundle of joy in the midst of our turmoil. I knew there was a possibility that the baby might not be mine, but I made a decision. I would raise this child as my own, regardless of its true paternity. It was my way of reaffirming my commitment to our family. As we navigated the challenges of parenthood together, Sarah and I found our love deepening. The bond between us grew stronger with each passing day. We were more committed than ever to rebuilding our family and forging a brighter future. But little did we know that the shadows of our past still loomed. David and Lisa, consumed by their thirst for revenge, were secretly plotting our downfall. They couldn't stand the thought of us finding happiness again, and they were determined to destroy the newfound peace in our lives. Their plan was sinister: to expose the paternity of Sarah's child and create chaos within our family. It was a cruel and calculated move, one that threatened to tear us apart once more. As the storm clouds of revenge gathered on the horizon, Sarah and I remained blissfully unaware of the impending danger. We were too focused on our love, our family, and the future we were building together. Little did we know that the past would come back to haunt us, and the battle for our happiness was far from over. Just when we thought we were on the path to healing, a sinister storm descended upon us. An anonymous letter arrived one gloomy morning, and its contents would turn our lives upside down. The letter contained a DNA test report, and the words on it struck like a dagger to my heart. It claimed to prove that I was not the father of Sarah's child. The shock of it was overwhelming, and I felt like I was drowning in a sea of despair. I confronted Sarah with the letter in trembling hands, tears blurring my vision. The trust we had been painstakingly rebuilding was shattered in an instant. I demanded a paternity test to confirm the child's true father, desperately hoping that the report was a cruel hoax. The day of the paternity test was a tortuous waiting game. The tension between Sarah and me was unbearable, and the silence was deafening. I tried to hold on to hope, but doubt gnawed at me like a relentless beast. When the results finally arrived, they were like a death sentence. The paternity test confirmed what the anonymous letter had claimed: I was not the biological father of Sarah's child. My world crumbled around me, and the pain was indescribable. With tears streaming down her face, Sarah finally confessed the truth. She admitted to her affair with David, the lies, the betrayal. It all spilled out like a torrent of guilt and regret. My heart ached as I listened to her words, but forgiveness felt like an impossible mountain to climb. The betrayal was too deep, the wounds too raw. I couldn't find it in my heart to forgive Sarah for her actions in the web of deceit that had torn our marriage apart. The love we had once shared was buried beneath the weight of our mistakes. In a decision that felt like the final nail in the coffin of our relationship, I made the agonizing choice to leave Sarah. Our journey, which had started with hope and love, had taken us through a harrowing storm of lies and betrayal. And in the end, it was a storm that had broken us beyond repair. The fallout from the paternity test was catastrophic, and it left a trail of destruction in its wake. Sarah lost everything: her marriage, her family, and her happiness. It was as if her world had crumbled into a million pieces, and there was no way to put it back together. With the results confirming that I was not the biological father of her child, I gained custody, severing Sarah's ties to her own offspring. The pain in her eyes as she said goodbye to our child was a heart-wrenching sight. It was a harsh reminder of the choices we had made and the consequences we had to face. Sarah spiraled into a deep abyss of depression and isolation. The weight of her choices bore down on her like an unrelenting burden. The guilt and regret were suffocating, and she withdrew from the world, drowning in her own sorrow. Meanwhile, David and Lisa reveled in their revenge, but it didn't bring them the satisfaction they had expected. Their victory was hollow. Their triumph over our suffering left a bitter taste in their mouths. It was a stark reminder that vengeance often comes at a high cost. As for me and our child, we had to move on without Sarah. It was a painful process, but we were determined to rebuild our lives. The wounds were still fresh, the scars still visible, but we carried on, trying to find a semblance of normalcy in the chaos that had become our lives. The chapter ended with a profound sense of loss and sadness. Our family had been shattered, and the future felt uncertain. It was a stark reminder that the choices we make in life can have far-reaching consequences, and sometimes, there's no going back. As the dust settled on the wreckage of our marriage, Sarah was left in the wake of her choices, searching for a way to redeem herself. She was desperate for forgiveness and redemption, and it led her down a path she never expected. Sarah reached out to a support group for people who had lost everything due to their mistakes. It was a place where the broken found solace and a glimmer of hope. She attended meetings, sharing her story with others who had walked a similar path of betrayal and loss. It was in this support group that Sarah met Dr. Wilson, a kind-hearted therapist who had dedicated her life to helping people confront their actions and make amends. Dr. Wilson saw the pain in Sarah's eyes, the regret that weighed heavy on her heart. She became a guiding light on Sarah's journey toward healing and forgiveness. Meanwhile, I decided to start dating again. It was a daunting prospect, but I couldn't let the past dictate my future. I met Karen, a woman who understood my history and the scars I carried. She was patient and empathetic, providing a safe space for me to rebuild my trust in love. Sarah, on the other hand, began to realize the importance of self-forgiveness. She knew that she couldn't change the past, but she could shape her future. She embarked on a journey of self-discovery, rebuilding her life independently and finding her own path to happiness. As for David and Lisa, their relationship crumbled under the weight of guilt and remorse. Their revenge had backfired, leaving them with a bitter taste in their mouths. The love they had once shared had been tainted by their actions, and the cracks in their partnership grew wider with each passing day. The chapter ended with a glimmer of hope. Sarah was on a path of redemption, Dr. Wilson guiding her toward healing. I had found a new love in Karen, someone who understood my past. And as for David and Lisa, they were left to grapple with the consequences of their actions, learning that revenge was a bitter pill to swallow. Dr. Wilson had become a guiding presence in Sarah's life, encouraging her to focus on personal growth and self-improvement. It wasn't an easy journey, but Sarah was determined to rebuild herself from the ground up. She attended therapy sessions regularly, delving deep into the roots of her mistakes and seeking a path to redemption. Meanwhile, my life had taken a different turn. I had found love again, this time with Karen. Our relationship had blossomed, and I knew I was ready to move on from my tumultuous past. It was with a sense of hope and renewed purpose that I proposed to Karen, eager to build a future together. As for Sarah, she found a new purpose in helping others who had faced similar challenges. The support group had become her sanctuary, a place where she could connect with those seeking redemption and healing. It was a way for her to give back, to use her own experiences to guide others on their path to recovery. Sarah's support group grew, becoming a haven for individuals who had lost their way but were determined to find it again. Together, they shared their stories, their pain, and their hopes for a brighter future. It was a testament to the power of redemption and the resilience of the human spirit. Then, unexpectedly, Sarah and I crossed paths at a community event. We were both changed by our past experiences, carrying the scars of our mistakes. The encounter was filled with mixed emotions, regret, nostalgia, and a sense of closure. We had both walked different paths, but our shared history would forever bind us in a way that no one else could understand. As the chapter came to a close, it was a reminder that life was a journey filled with twists and turns, with pain and redemption. Sarah and I had faced our demons, and while our paths had diverged, we had each found our own way to heal and rebuild. The future was uncertain, but we had hope, and that was enough to keep moving forward. In an unexpected turn of events, Sarah offered me a sincere apology. Her words were filled with remorse and a genuine desire to make amends for the pain she had caused. I couldn't deny the growth I had seen in her, the journey she had embarked on toward redemption. I acknowledged her efforts, and while I appreciated her apology, I remained committed to my new life with Karen. The wounds of the past were still there, and I knew that forgiveness didn't always mean reconciliation. We had both changed, and our paths had diverged irreversibly. As for David and Lisa, their lives continued to unravel as they faced the consequences of their actions. The weight of their revenge had left them with a heavy burden. Guilt and remorse gnawed at their souls, and the satisfaction they had hoped for remained elusive. Sarah, on the other hand, had become a beacon of hope for others who had faced similar challenges. Her support group had grown, and she embraced her new life with a sense of purpose and meaning. She had found peace within herself, a redemption she had worked tirelessly to achieve. The story took its final turn when I and Karen decided to marry, forging a new, strong, and loving family. It was a celebration of our love, a testament to our ability to heal and find happiness even after devastating mistakes. As the final chapter came to a close, it was a reminder that forgiveness and self-improvement could lead to a brighter future, even after the darkest of times. Sarah's journey of redemption had shown us that it was possible to find hope, peace, and a second chance at happiness, no matter how deep the wounds of